Etymology and historical origin of the baby name Walter. In early medieval England, Walter was originally rendered as Wealdhere, pronounced water, a personal name from the Germanic elements wald meaning rule and heri meaning army. The name was also common among the Frankish and was later reintroduced to the English by the Norman French in the form of Walter, which superseded and replaced the original Old English form of the name, although the French form of Walter today is Gautier. One of the earliest notable figures who bore this name was a legendary Visigoth hero from the 5th century, Walter of Aquitaine, whose story was popular during the Middle Ages and known to the Anglo-Saxons. The Visigoths were a Germanic tribe who had migrated to southern Europe. They are the ones who famously sacked Rome in 410 AD. Waldere, Walter, is an Anglo-Saxon epic poem recovered in between the pages of an Elizabethan prayer book by a 19th-century Copenhagen librarian 1,000 years after it had been written. Although only fragments were found, the poem's existence indicates the popularity of this legend throughout the Germanic world. It tells of the Gothic hero Waldere and his love Hiltigund, a Burgundian princess, who are taken hostage by the Huns and subsequently flee after stealing treasures from Attila's court. The king of the Burgundians, Gunther, gets wind of the valuable booty and, believing the lovers and their treasure to be a part of his domain, takes pursuit. The young fugitives are eventually overtaken by the king and his men, but Walter positions himself well and kills them all in single bloody combat, all but the king and his main officer Hagen. Gunther and Hagen continue to pursue Walter and engage in one final, brutal battle before a peace agreement is reached. The poem ends with the assurance of a happy future for Walter and his bride Hiltigund. Walter has been an extremely popular name among the English, dating way back to medieval England and on par with names like John, Robert, William and Richard. Personality of the boy named Walter. The number 7 personality is deeply mystical and highly in tune with their spirituality. They operate on a different wavelength than the average Joe. Spending time alone comes easily to 7s, as it gives them time to contemplate philosophical, religious, and spiritual ideas in an effort to find real truth. 7s are wise, but often exude mystery as if they are tapped into something the rest of us don't understand. They love the outdoors and are fed by nature. 7s are constantly seeking to understand human nature, our place in the universe, and the mystery of life in general. This makes them quite artistic and poetic, but they are also keen observers with high intellect, so they are equally scientific-minded. 7s are charitable and care deeply about the human condition. Popularity of the boy named Walter. The name Walter has had a long and successful history on the American male naming charts. Between the years 1880 and 1940, this name was among the top 25 most favored boy names in the United States. That's a claim only a very few names can make. Even after the 1940s, Walter remained on the top 50 list for another almost 30 years. It wasn't until 1973 that Walter dropped off the top 100 list for the first time, probably, in the history of America. Sadly, since the 1980s this is a name that has fallen out of style quickly. It has graciously stepped aside to make room for the Jadens, Aidens, and Logans of modern-day naming practices. Walter has gone from dominating a spot on the list of most commonly used boy names throughout most of our nation's history, to being one of the most unstylish names today. However, if past endurance is any indicator, we should see Walter return triumphantly once again. We hope so, at least. This is a name with antique charm and refreshing old-world sophistication. It's also a great choice for a baby boy born into a military, army, family. Quick facts on Walter. Gender, boy. Origin, English. Number of syllables, 2. Ranking popularity, 342. Pronunciation, Waltr. Simple meaning, ruler of the army. Characteristics of Walter. Mystical, intuitive, imaginative, solitary, philosophical, eccentric, wise. Cultural references to the baby name Walter. Literary characters of the baby name Walter. Walter Mitty is the subject of James Thurber's famous short story, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, first published in The New Yorker in 1939. He is an ineffectual, meek, henpecked kind of man who, in his daydreams, is a daredevil pilot, a brilliant doctor, and a cunning killer, among other fantasies. His character's name has passed into the lexicon as the epitome of one who leads a rich fantasy life in contrast to his very ordinary everyday life. Even in those daydreams, the hapless Walter often trips over his own dreams and ends up a victim of his own making. The 1947 film starring Danny Kaye eschewed the psychological overtones of Thurber's work and presented Mitty as a lovable doofus who lands in the middle of his own fantasy and is led to admit that heroism isn't all it's cracked up to be. Whatever the interpretation, be it dark-edged or light-hearted, there is no doubt of the importance of the imagination in the lives of the species known as Homo sapiens. Popular songs on Walter. Uncle Walter, a song by the Blue Dogs. Walter Whitman, Where Are You, a song by Gino Vanelli, a song by Ben Folds 5, Walter. Famous people named Walter. Walter Johnson, baseball player. Sir Walter Raleigh, explorer. Walter A. Willis, actor. Walter Alston, baseball manager. Walter Brown, hockey player. Little Walter, blues harmonica player. Walter Hagen, golfer. Walter Disney, film producer. Walter Matthau, actor. Walter Mondale, U.S. Vice President. Walter Cronkite, TV news anchor. Walter Payton, football player. Walter Travis, golfer. Walter Walt Whitman, poet/essayist. Walter Pratt, hockey player. Sir Walter Scott, Scottish author. Walter Bush, hockey player.